Welcome to this awesome session. I'm glad you dissed other guys to be here. Really, really proud of you. So this topic is 10 steps to turn your ideas into startups, and I am Daniel Sudhindaran. If you're having your notes or laptops or whatever, relax. It's going to be a fun presentation, fun session, and it's just going to be a cool journey of becoming a kick-ass entrepreneur. So, initially, before starting, you usually ask, before starting a presentation, you usually ask two questions, why and what. First, why should I care? Why should I even care for being here? What is it going to do to me? So we will go over that before I jump to the what, which is what must I do to accomplish what I care about. So, first thing is why. Let's start off with Uber. Everyone knows Uber. Everyone wants to be Uber. Uber really defines the power of technology. So taxi industry has been there for a while, and they disrupted decades and decades of taxi services. Taxi services that performed for decades and decades. They disrupted them, and the one interesting fact is Uber, the world's largest taxi companies, owns no vehicles. Have you ever thought about that? So they do not own a single vehicle, yet they're the world's biggest transportation company. And with that, and because all it is software, that's the power of software. That's why we in this room can create things that are so amazing just with the power of code and software to transform what's around us. It's valuated at $62 billion. So to put things in perspective, so million, billion, it's all just a letter difference, you might think. So to put things in perspective, 12 days, for 1 million seconds to elapse, it's going to take 12 days. It's going to take 31.7 years for 1 billion seconds to elapse. So, when you think about those numbers, those guys own that kind of money. So, pretty inspiring. Everyone likes money. The second startup that started as a startup, which is a cool story that we'll see throughout this presentation, how they got started and everything, is Airbnb. They are the world's largest accommodation provider, owning no real estate. Again, pretty interesting fact. One more thing is they are worth $30 billion. And to put things more in perspective, Hilton has existed for decades. They were founded in 1919, and they are worldwide. Hyatt was founded in 1957. They are worldwide as well. Airbnb was founded just in 2008. And Hilton and Hyatt put together are not valuated as much as Airbnb. Just think about that for a second. Just with technology. That's why we're so fortunate to be in this tech industry. When you think about the large scale, sometimes, let's see how technology affects in a smaller scale. So, of course, a lot of Beeline folks are here. We know a guy called Stephen Hunter, and he works in the configuration team, so he's learning how to code. And he learned how to code for iOS. And he created his first phone app. Simple application. It's a card skimmer locator. It scans for Bluetooth devices around you, and card skimmers usually have a Bluetooth thing attached to it, so it can transmit. And all it does, it's like scans, looks for proximity sensors and stuff like that, and scans it and gives you a list of Bluetooth devices. 2 screens. One is, if you open the app, it's going to say none found. Second screen, possible skimmer located. So very simple app. He's a new guy, right? So he didn't do too much of the UI. He just had 2 screens, basic functionality. I was like, dude, why don't you put a button in there? Because when he didn't care about that too, because he was like, you know what, I just want to leave it up there. Because when you go from 1 gas station to the next, you have to close the app and open the app again to see it. So he didn't care about that. And still, in a few months, there were 11,812 downloads. Just for a simple app like that. Imagine if you have a cooler idea, how many more downloads you can get on the App Store. So, follow your passion while, you can still follow your passion while still working a full-time job. My boss is here, so I wanted to put it in there. But you can make time. You can do a side app on your free time. So don't be afraid to fail. You're going to fail a lot, hopefully not too much, but you're going to fail, it's okay. Like Mark Cuban says, it doesn't matter how many times you fail, you only have to be right once. It only took Airbnb once, Uber once to be successful, and that's all that mattered. So that's me. I'm all smiling because I graduated, and I thought I would never get out of UNF. I thought my grandkids were going to go to school with me, still going to be there. Luckily, I graduated. Boring stuff, been a program for 10 years, got my master's in information sciences. But the cool thing is, I took a class called Entrepreneurship and Venture Capital. That is the one that actually taught me how easy it is to start a business if you have the right idea or even the wrong idea, how easy it is to start a business. And after looking around the guys in my class, they were all struggling to bring their idea to life because they didn't have the technical knowledge. I did. So I was like, wow, it's easier for me to create something from scratch and build it all the way through without any help if I think of something. So that was really inspiring. And after that class, my co-founder and I created an app called Trade Sumo. It's a bartering app by proximity. So let's say I have a textbook, you have some shades, we can just swap it for free. It's like the Swip Swap groups kind of deal with a way cooler interface. So that was my first startup experience, and I thought as long as you had a good idea, people are just going to come. You put it out there, and people are just going to run to it. Didn't think about how to grow users, nothing. So that's where you learn. You have to start somewhere. So there were plenty of user growth problems because there was also the chicken and egg problem. Let's say we're launching in Jacksonville. There needs to be at least 500 active users every day for the app to be productive, for 500 the first user when he comes in to see any items to trade. So, and we have to grow in each city. So unless you have, when you think of an idea, unless you have plans to grow your user base, it's not, you might as well give up. You can't, the magic is not going to happen. People are not just, you have to plan the virality and all of that. So we'll discuss some of the problems it had throughout the presentation. The second app I built with my brother was Rich. So we wanted to negotiate, you can negotiate an entire car deal from the comfort of your house. So that's still ongoing. A couple of lessons learned there too, which I'll go over throughout the presentation. So, time to take action. So now you know why it's so powerful to create startups and how you can do it too. Anyone can do it. Now it's time to take action. Step one. First step, you have to have an idea, right? Pick an idea. Ideas can come from personal pain points like Airbnb. This was the first email that kicked it all off. So this was an email sent by Joe to Brian. Brian, I thought of a way to make a few bucks, turning our place into designers' bread and breakfast, offering young designers who come into town a place to crash during the 4-day event. Some 4-day event was possibly happening, complete with wireless internet, a small desk space, sleeping mat, and breakfast each morning. They pivoted plenty of times possibly, they changed the strategy plenty of times, but now it's worth $30 billion. So you have to start somewhere. It might change but start somewhere, just go with it. Snapchat. Sometimes you can try to replicate what happens in real world with technology. If you think about it, Snapchat, as everyone knows, you send an image or a video and it disappears after a little bit. You might have done this in school, you know, when the teacher is not watching or whatever, you write a little paper, you hand it to your friend, and, you know, no one can see it. If anyone sees it, you crush it and throw it away. It disappears. That's the concept that they replicated at a larger scale. And now we all know how popular Snapchat is. So you can also pick an idea where you're trying to replicate what happens in real world. You can also do what Uber did, solve a problem. If you're great at problem solving, pick a problem and solve it. If you think you have a better chance of solving that problem than anyone else, solve it. And try to hear problems from your friends and family, and you know, constantly be on the lookout for problems and try to solve it. Or you can have a small you can have improvements of an existing idea. You don't have to come up with groundbreaking ideas all the time. Slack. I mean, when Slack came out, there were plenty of communication mechanisms. Skype was there, plenty of messaging apps were there, but Slack improved on an existing concept, listening to users, and they built a huge billion-dollar business around it. So you can do something like that. Last of all, you know, the best way to come up with ideas is to brainstorm with your friends, maybe over a couple of beers, wherever. That's when all the crazier idea comes out. You know, give your buddy a couple of beers, and he'll spit out some crazy ideas. And maybe that's not it, but that might spark another thought in your head, you know, that you're like, you know what, that's a crazy idea, that's stupid, but you're onto something there. I'm going to try to take and run with it. So that's like ideas, right? You pick an idea, and also validate that with your friends. Like, don't be like, oh, I have a great idea, I'm not going to tell anybody, and I'm just going to go and do it. Because it's a long road ahead. You want to validate your idea as much as possible before you do anything. Before you do anything. So don't be afraid. Facebook story, yes, everyone hears it. Oh, he stole my idea and he became a billionaire. That only happens like once in a while. These days, ideas are cheap. If you go to ideas on ideas.com, there are plenty of ideas over there. Everyone have ideas. It's execution and how you plan to grow your user base, your passion for it. These are the things that are going to set you apart. So that's the first step. Second step, research your competition, your competitors, right? So every time you have an idea, you think like, okay, you validate it with a couple of people, go and see if someone else is doing it already, right? So most of the time, I get very disappointed because I'll think of something in my car, or I'll talk with my friends, I'll be super excited about it, I'm like, oh my God, this is the best idea ever. And then I'll go home, and then I'll try to type it in Google, and I'll just be like waiting to see if anyone already did it, if a bigger player already did it. And most of them are done. But you know, there are some competitors are not well known, so you can have improvements and be like, hey, you know what? I know that guy did that. Learn their strengths and weaknesses, and if you can capitalize on their weaknesses and come up with and compete with them, that's fine too. But Uber Eats, so my buddy Justin Hunter, some of you might know him. Again, we were drinking, he was having a couple of beers, and he was like, hey man, I have a great idea. This was before Uber Eats was ever a thing. A couple of small players were in the food delivery services. So he was like, tap a button, and someone like Uber comes and delivers your food. And he had some innovative concepts around it. He wanted to go, I was like, hold on, let me just go look and see if anyone else is doing it. I looked up. At that time, Uber, there were rumors that Uber was coming out with something called Uber Eats, where they're about to launch it. So I was like, we can't compete with Uber, man. Like, they have the infrastructure, they have the drivers, they have everything going on, they'll crush us. So it's like, so it's good to know your competition. While you're getting to know your competition, also like validate, every step of the way, validate your ideas. Because as you go farther and farther, it's only going to get harder to come out. I mean, you can come out anytime. but it's a lot of time spent is what I'm trying to say. Step 3, find the right co-founders. So co-founders can make or break a startup, so pick them wisely. So assess your own strengths and weaknesses. You know what are your strong points, what are your weak points, and find a person who has a different skill set than you. So if you're a technical guy, sure, we're all nerds, we like working with technical guys all the time, so we're like feeling comfortable. We're like, oh, we're only 4 developers are going to start a startup. All of you have the technical skills. Who's going to market it? Who's going to sell it? Who's going to project manage or product manage? You know what I mean? So pick a skill set different than you, and pick the co-founders wisely. And find a person who's passionate about your idea, as passionate about your idea as you. If a guy is just joining you for any other reason than being passionate about it and making money, you got to question that, because he's going to drop off. I mean, it's not going to last very long. And know how to use the resources you already have. I realized that being in our field, most of us work in some kind of software company, I would assume, because it's code on the beach. We already have connections. We know developers, we know testers, we know project managers, we know marketing people, salespeople. So we have the whole flow going on, even within our company, and we go to these awesome events like Code on the Beach, and we meet new people, so we are well connected. So use your resources, Go talk to a friend or someone you've worked with before, preferably, and figure out their personality. And make it equity-based. I mean, unless you have $1 million laying around to tell them, hey man, $50,000, come work with me. Usually you want to tell them, hey, let's work on equity model. Let's split the equity however you want, and let's go for it. And don't get too hung up on equity, because owning 5% of $1 billion business is better than owning 95% of a failed startup. So some people have trouble, even before they get started, they're like, oh, I want this much equity or that much equity. It doesn't matter. You got to execute. If the guy is good, give him more equity. Bring him on, So that's about co-founders. 4th is make it official. Now, you have an idea. You know how to get your co-founders. Now, this step is just make it official. Come up with a good name for your startup. It's usually simple names that resonate with people go a long way. And so you have tools like Startup Company Generator, namemesh.com. So you pretty much type in a couple of words, right? And they will generate the name for you. So let's say I want to create the next Uber. I search for ride sharing, and it'll list out common, SEO, fun, extra, mix, short names, and new. So they also, instead of going to GoDaddy and typing every single name you want and them coming back and saying it's already taken, these only display the domain names that are not taken. So it saves you a lot of time. Cool tool to use. And domain names are cheap, as you guys know. Sometimes it can be as cheap as $5. The second thing to make it official is legal entity types. Just file for LLC, C Corp, or S Corp. If you're confused, there's some tax benefits to one or the other. Don't worry. There's sites like LegalZoom that tell you the difference between the different taxations and everything. And you can just start your LLC. I tried doing one yesterday. It was super smooth and easy, 5-6 steps. So all these tools are out there. Step 5, figure out your business model. Now that you've established, kind of, sort of, you have your domain, figure out your business model. Business model is nothing but how do you plan to make money, right? That's the whole point of an app. You might do it for fun as a hobby and stuff, but resources are not cheap. It's gonna you're gonna burn out. So how do you make money? There are plenty of apps out there where you can copy their model already, or you can come up with a creative business model. But freemium like Tinder or Spotify, they offer them for free, and you can purchase the pro version. Subscription like Netflix or Dropbox, where you pay a monthly fee. run ads like Facebook or Pinterest, which is actually really hard. Getting users is way harder. So Facebook and Pinterest, like a few unicorns like that exist, but it's a harder thing to get into. And you can also charge a transaction fee on like Airbnb or Uber. Funding your app. At this point, you have an idea, you created a domain, and it might be tempting, you know what, I have an awesome idea. You know what, I have a great idea. It's going to change the whole world. So I'm going to go seek funding. So it's a very tempting mistake to make because you believe in your idea so much, you just feel like if you have the money, you can go after it, you can market it, you can get developers and everything. Great mistake. Seeking investment at this early point in your app, especially when you can easily bootstrap. Bootstrapping is just, using your own money to fund your app, like paying for hosting or any other thing you want. Bootstrapping is also easy because Amazon and Azure and everyone give out free tiers for startups for a year or something like that. So you won't be like hard on cash. Seeking investment with Switch, that's one of the mistakes we made. We did get investment because my brother's company, he pitched it to them, and they gave a little bit of investment, which also added a lot of pressure to deliver. After they give investment, investors, they want to like see the money, right? So you can't really pivot too much. And you're like cutting corners, you're trying to get to that place as fast as possible, but startups don't work like that. You got to really test it and experiment to figure out what works and what doesn't. Step 6, build your prototype. This is really cool. Build your first prototype. Finally, we're at the prototype stage. Now you can let your ideas unleash, but on a piece of paper. Initially, start with a piece of paper. Don't like go start coding. I know there are coding prototypes and stuff that still involves code. So I would say start with a piece of paper, jot down all the ideas, jot down all the flows, see if it makes sense to you. Sometimes you might think you have a great idea, you put it on paper, it might not even make sense to you. You're like, wait a minute, how does the user go from that place to this place? So map it all down on a piece of paper, right? That's the first step. Possibly ask your family, like, hey, does this even make sense to you, even at this stage? A little bit more, after you've done all that, then you can use free apps like Envision or Proto.io to build nice prototypes that are click-through, and these apps are free, and you can pretty much simulate a real app using these. So they come on your phone, whether it's a mobile app or a web app. You can actually give it to your end users, your target users, to let them play with it, to get feedback, to see if it works or not. If it's something, even at this stage, you have the opportunity to scratch and move on if it doesn't work. So yeah. And validate your prototype with your target users. Yeah, you can validate it with your mom and dad, but if you're building an app for a college kid, your mom's not really going to help you, right? So validate your prototype with some target users. Don't worry about your idea being stolen. No college kid, is that smart. Kidding. But with people you trust, you know what I mean? Like go with people you trust. Validate your prototypes. And next, build the first version of your app. So there's also an exciting point for programmers. We just want to jump in the code. The first thing we want to do is just code. But, once you start coding, you realize that changes take time, deployments, pushes. Now you're paying for a production environment on Azure or AWS and stuff like that. So do your validations in your prototype. Once you get to that point of coding, start with the simplest version of your app. You might have enormous features, great features on your prototypes. That's great. You can validate it, see if it works. But start with the simplest version of your app. Strip out everything, any other stuff, but focus on the core of your app. And because you want to get to production as quickly as possible, test the concept again with more users, with the app in their hands as quickly as possible so they can give feedback, right? So you want that feedback. If you want to pivot, you can pivot. You'll have more time that way. So start with the simplest version of your app and take it from there. Push it to prod as soon as possible. And you can always iterate, because when you give it to users, they'll even suggest for feedback. They'll be like, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? I think I like this. So based on their feedback, you can build features iteratively. And your app doesn't have to be 100% perfect when you push it out either, right? But it needs to not have bugs. Users don't have tolerance for bugs. Test your app, you know. Your friends, family, whoever, like give it to them and test it, because users have a low tolerance for failing apps. Only 16% will try a failing app more than twice. So if your app breaks, that's a sure way to drive users away. Especially for a startup, it looks bad, just, you know, test it. So step 8. This is where a lot of companies fail, right? Coding is awesome. I know software engineers, they're like, you know what, I built that 3-tier thing. It's all cool, you know. I use the latest like Vue.js or, you know, React.js or React Native. They're all excited about that. And it's all cool. Once you build the app, you're like, you know, this is awesome. I'm really proud of my app. Now let's see if the users really care about your code or like your app, like the functionality, right? So marketing, this is where marketing, from this point on, is really critical. The next 2 steps, step 8 and step 9, we're going to spend a little bit more time on it. It's really critical to get your app off the ground and you know, let your little baby into the wild. And marketing, what are the few things you can do in marketing? Give special discounts. If you're charging for your app, give special discounts for people who have helped you from the beginning, right? Your friends, family, people who gave you advice, you know, or any early customer. You want the initial customers, you know, don't really care about your app that much, right? They're like, oh, who's this new guy who built this app? Okay, like you have 20 app ads that show up on your Facebook or Instagram. You don't click on everything, right? So it's really hard to grab users' attention, but in traditional marketing ways. And those ads also cost money. So give your app to people who are with you throughout the journey, give them special discounts or whatever, and get feedback from them, right? And try to iterate. And create a landing page. I know it's like, sounds silly, but create a landing page, because a lot of apps, like even my buddy's app, I don't think he has a landing page. He just has the app on the App Store. So to drive people to a place where you explain all the features, you know, you want to have a landing page that is mobile responsive, and you can lead whatever your marketing efforts is, you can lead them there and have a link there to, for them to download the app from the store. Encourage your friends to post on social media, right? This is achievable. We all have friends. Some more than the others, but we do have friends. And leverage those connections. Like, talk about your app on social media and encourage them to post it on their social media, and, you know, hopefully it goes a little viral that way, and it maybe gets you your initial 100 to 500 users that you want, that are really critical. So that's your acquisition, right? Once you acquire those users, you need to retain them. And we'll talk about how to retain them and stuff like that. But the initial acquisition is really, really important. Those are your, you know, like, sort of your first fruits. So take advantage of that. Be active on forums, blogs, and user threads. So what do when you need something? You go to Google and you're like, hey, does this exist? Or, you know, I mean, you search for other things too, but, you know, typically when it comes to a need, you search there, and then it points you to a blog or a thread where people are asking questions like that. So if you build an app that solves a problem or something, you go type how the user might type and see what questions they've asked. Now go to those links and answer those questions, promoting your app, right? So you can be like, hey, I know you're asking for that. I know this app that does it. I mean, you can speak in third person if you want. Like, I know this great app that does the thing you want to do, and here's the link to download it, right? So that user sees it, and everyone else after that who types that same question will get pointed to that because your hits will increase and bubble up to the top. So that's a cool way, free way, to promote your app also and post it on Reddit or all these popular forums. You can ask a question and answer it yourself if you want to. Up to you. Just be creative, you know. Sky's the limit. Of course, optimize for search engines. You know, there's a lot of SEO techniques out there. You can Google them and make sure anything related to you, any keywords related to your app comes up first, and your hit rate and everything increases. Reach out to influencers who influence your target market. So influencers are really critical in app marketing because they, like the word suggests, they influence people, right? So people are looking up to them, and they would do whatever they promote because they admire them. They're the role models and stuff. So see who the influencers are in your target market. So maybe your target market is college kids, right? So reach out to your professors if need be. And maybe you know the mayor of Jacksonville. I know a couple of mayors at Jack's Beach. I mean, they're out all the time, but they're not really mayors. I'm just saying those guys are out all the time. They're like influencers of Jack's Beach. People, they have tons of friends, and people really like, when they post something, people immediately see that. They have like 3,000 followers. I know a couple of people like that. So those are your influencers. Go talk to them. There are connections. Introduce the app to them and help them to try to convince them to promote your app with them. And maybe they can get some incentive. Like maybe they get 1% equity or commission or something like that. Make some kind of deal with them because those influencers are really, really important. It can be a CEO of your company. It can be your boss. I mean, whoever it can be, those are your influencers. Or you might know some cool athlete, right? So look for influencers in your target market and reach out to them and try to influence them to promote your app. Also, make an appearance at public events around you. I know, we all like to do things digital, and but just going to an event, like let's say Code on the Beach, right? Let's say you're promoting an app, just coming to this event, just showing up and talking to people, letting them know that you just built this cool app, just ask them to try it out, and or if there's a fair or some great event like One Spark or something like that, just show up. Show up, have some flyers ready, have an app built first of all, and then promote it through them. And lastly, you can try to join an accelerator program like Y Combinator, and there are other Y Combinator type stuff like 500 startups and tech starts and stuff like that. There are a couple of really popular ones. So once you have your app, it's a great idea. You validated it. You have a few users. Now you can pitch it to Y Combinator. It's really hard to get into those programs, but who knows? They might see your idea and go like, that's actually a cool idea. That has great potential. So they might take you into the program. It's a 3-month program, and you get in there, and they start helping you build your app and promote it. And they are great in the tech community because every 3 months, startups graduate, so to speak, right? And there's a demo day where they demo it to investors like Mark Cuban or whoever. All these popular guys, celebrities show up. So if you get in there after the 3 months, they'll tweak your app, whatever needs to happen, or they'll even build your app from scratch if you have this amazing idea, right? But it's good to go after you have an app built at least and you have founders and everything. So they will help you promote it too, and it's free publicity, right? Half the people that show up on Shark Tank are not there for the money. I mean, they're owning $1 million businesses, right? They are there to promote their app or idea or whatever, so that even if they don't close the deal there are always there are calls waiting for them because another guy thought it was a great idea. So it's kind of like that. Or you can go on Shark Tank too. They will also put you, of course, in touch with investors. They post on their Y Combinator site, which a lot of people follow, and they also post on TechCrunch and everything. So it'll go public, viral really quick. So they are a really, really, really good place to go if you have a great idea. So that's it for marketing, right? There are a few other things that you can do to market. Just be creative. This is your initial acquisition, your initial users, without spending money. This is all like without spending money. Of course, if you have $1 million investment, like LetGo, apps like LetGo and all these guys had $35 million investment, and they were marketing all over the place, and poor little Trade Sumo didn't even take off because they just crushed it, right? Because they came with a lot of funding, because they grew their initial users, went to investors, got the money. Now they're everywhere, right? They had ads everywhere. Every time I saw a LetGo ad or OfferUp ad, I would like, there'll be a tear down my eye. I'm like, I could have done that. But they just started early and they did the right things, so they were successful. Next thing, step 9, grow your customer base. This is the most important thing for in terms of startups. This is it. You have to know how to grow your customers. You might have the most kick-ass app in the world, but your user base is going to plateau at a certain point. You're going to reach out to your Facebook friends. You're going to post on all these blogs. Initially, there might be some virality, and you might get the initial 1,000 users or 2,000 users, but it's going to stop there, right? You have to know how to grow your user base, and the industry, the term they use these days is like growth hacking. You have to know how to growth hack. And let's see some of the startups, what they did. So Airbnb, as you know, that simple email that we saw earlier, that's how they started. And then they launched an app called Airbnb, and they had a few issues initially, but they came out of it. And finally, they plateaued at a certain point, right? They had a few people in San Fran having all these listings, but users were not coming to Airbnb to actually see those listings. So they were like, what do we do? A typical marketing person would have asked for more funding to the investors, and they would have pumped more ads, right? They probably did that too, but nothing worked. So the engineering team got involved, and they did something really, really cool. It's the most brilliant growth hack, and it's like a Silicon Valley legend. So after users plateaued, Airbnb's engineering team figured out a way to cross-publish Airbnb listings on Craigslist. So Craigslist, as you know, there are millions of users, right? I don't know how people go to that app, but there are millions of users on Craigslist. It's existed for a long time. So Airbnb wanted to take advantage of those users because it's already popular. Craigslist doesn't have an API. At that time, it didn't even have a proper UI. So without an API, the Airbnb team had to figure out a way to somehow get those customers. So what they did was they reverse engineered their Craigslist code a little bit, saw meticulously how postings are posted, down to the detail, to the thumbnail, to the image size, and everything, the format, everything. They perfected it, and they were able to. What they were able to do is post Airbnb listings on Craigslist. So 1 million users go on Craigslist, they click on the listing, they come to Airbnb, and now they're getting a lot more activity. So a marketing person would have never thought of that. It's more of an engineering thing because the marketing person wouldn't have known where to start, right? So it's really critical to involve your engineering team and make your app go viral somehow. And this is one of the first emails. I mean, not first emails. This is one of the emails when they did that growth hack. Simple. Hi, Rishi. Reposting your listing from Airbnb to Craigslist increases your earnings by $500 per month on average. Click here to repost a couch in the Mission in one click. By reposting your listing to Craigslist, you'll get the benefit of more demand while still being able to use Airbnb to manage and moderate your inquiries. Simple. It looks simple, but that one click involved a lot of engineering, right? And so when that person clicks it, automatically posts it on Craigslist, and now they're getting traffic from both places. They didn't do it like automatically, I don't think. That's why they let the user decide, because the user needs to know where it's coming from, maybe. So what did that do? End result, millions clicked over to Airbnb, millions. And that's how they actually like grew their business so much. All this without spending any money. There's another a cool story about Airbnb listings, right? They also, even after this, they were not satisfied with their million users. So they went to New York City. They had a problem where people were not, they wanted to launch in New York City, but people are not booking. Because for them, it's not the number of users that are in the system, the number of bookings, that's how they get paid. So the founders went to New York City, and they actually saw the listings from New York City, and it was all taken with crappy phones and like, you know how like, you just take a picture and post it. So that's why they figured out, that's why probably the listing, no one's like booking. So what they did was they hired, they took photographs. They went door to door to their listings. They took photographs of professional photographs of those listings and posted that on Airbnb. That increased their user, that increased people going for those listings. And if you think about it, it's simple. They just went door, I mean, it's a little bit of work, but they went door to door for like maybe the 100 listings or whatever there was in New York City, took professional photographs and posted it on Airbnb. And after that success, they were able to replicate that with other cities too, and that became professional on their own. Now photographers were hired to take amazing, look at the background. I mean, it's like, these are the kind of photographs they take. You know, it's very professional, very crisp, and that led to a lot of people going to Airbnb. Now, Airbnb also, they tried and tested several other things. It's not like they had these two things that were going on for them and that's all they used. They meticulously, the way you do growth hacking is you put tools to, you have to have the data, right? So you put tools like Countly or Google Analytics on your system to see what users come, what users go. And you send surveys out to people and ask them, hey, how are you doing? Rated good, bad, ugly. And ask for feedback. So they collect all that data, and they're like, what's working for us, what's not working for us. So it's a lot of like meticulous data collection, seeing your data, seeing where the marketing works, seeing what kind of users are gravitating towards you, and capitalizing on those things, right? So it's a combined effort. That's why it's not like just a marketing thing. Growth hacking involves the whole team to get involved. So let's look at the use case of Dropbox. So Dropbox is a great app. When it first came out, as we all know, there were plenty of people using it. But their user base also plateaued, like around maybe 100,000, I don't know. But it plateaued, and they were wondering what to do. At that point, they were analyzing some survey results that they got back, feedback from. So the users were actually, they got more referrals, more Dropbox users that were referrals, right? So they were like, wow, referrals is a thing, so let's focus on that and improve the referral program. So what they did was After surveying a lot of Dropbox users due to referrals, Dropbox took advantage of that mindset. And they introduced a referral program where you get 250 megabytes of free space if a friend is referred. Dropbox users, all they cared about is space, right? They're there for space. Giving them that space for free, if you refer to a friend, that was the magic trick, right? Space was cheap. They didn't have to spend money. Space was really cheap. So, at that time, they were hosting on Amazon S3, which was really cheap, so they didn't really care. And users, it went viral like that. And again, it's collecting survey data, analyzing, and then working with the engineering team to do all these things, to analyze, like, is 250 megs the right number, and all that. Fortunately, it worked for them. What happened? Dropbox users were sending 2.8 million invites per month, and the company grew from 100,000 users to 4 million, all in just 14 months. So, when you have an idea, also think about how you're going to get to the users. Because otherwise, even Dropbox, after all their marketing and funding, they were only able to get to 100,000 users, and they would not have been a profitable business until they figured out, meticulously figured out what worked for them and what didn't work for them. So that's the key. And Uber, I think PayPal did it first, but Uber did a similar thing with the referral program. Hey, if you refer a friend, $10 for you and your friend. So they obviously had funding. So they probably had like a $2 million or something cap, and they're like, if that runs out, we'll stop that program, but until then, we'll give out free like $10 referral bonus for people. Lyft did that, Uber did that, PayPal, I think, were the people that originally did it. So something like, if you have the money, you can do that. If you don't have the money, you can have creative ways to get users. Hotmail did another cool trick. So the way Hotmail went viral is at the end of the email, very small thing, at the end of their email, they added, hi, send from Hotmail, you can get Hotmail for free, click here. That's it, right? Something along those lines. So obviously, when 100 people send emails to 100 more people, they're like, oh, free email. Like, so click, 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 click. And that's how they were able to grow users too. So, get creative with this whole process. So what is growth hacking? Growth hacking is an umbrella term for strategies focused solely on growth. It is usually used in relation to early-stage startups who need massive growth in a short time on a small budget. So these are ways you can do it without breaking the bank. Again, data analytics and testing. So survey results, like metrics from your app, etc. Collect that data and see your marketing side, what works, what doesn't work, and work with your engineering team. And all these three teams need to collaborate and bring in data from all three sides to form a perfect growth hacking team, right? And that's when you can actually think about these ideas. If the marketing did their own thing, nothing was going to happen. Software engineers were thinking their own thing. They wouldn't know what worked and what didn't work. And without the data, you can't do much. So the last step, I'm glad, I usually talk a lot, so I'm glad that I'm within my time. Last step is raise capital. Now you have, validated your idea, validated your app, and there are probably thousands or 10,000 users or even 1 million users using your app at this point, right? You've done all the viral stuff, and now, finally, it is time to raise capital, right? So now you have something going on for you. Investors will be interested. They're like, hey, you got a lot of users, you know what you're doing, you have a business plan, and they will be more invested in it. So you can reach out to your family, if you come from a wealthy family, reach out to your uncle or aunt or grandpa, and your friends, investors, VCs. Now is the time to go and get more funding to take it to that next level. Because with 1 million users or 2 million users or 3 million users, your costs also increase, You need to constantly have an acquisition cost because you need your marketing to flow through to get that new users. So a lot of it is involved before. Now that you've come through all that, now you can finally raise capital. So, recap. Pick an idea, research competitors, find co-founders, make it official, figure out your business model, build your first prototype, build first version of your app, market your app, grow customer base, and raise capital. So these things don't have to be done in the exact same order. I mean, you can do a few things first and stuff like that, like grow customer base versus market your app. That can be interchanged if you have a cool idea for growth hacking. But generally, this will get you started on a well-established startup. So I do have 10 minutes for questions. If you guys have questions, go for it. And after that, if we have a few minutes, I'll also share a couple of other things that went wrong with the apps that I built. Go ahead.
Yeah, with these the accelerator programs that you mentioned, does any of that exist here in like the Jacksonville or regional area, or do you typically have to go to like these major tech hubs to kind of find those programs?
So Jacksonville actually, my first apps, Trade Sumo, came out of an accelerator, kind of like a short accelerator program. So it was called Startup Weekend. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It existed 4 years ago or 5 years ago. I don't know if it exists still. I think a couple of professors from UNF were running it, and basically a bunch of people, business people, tech folks, they have 1 minute to pitch an idea, and there's like, let's say 60 people. You can listen to that idea. If you like that idea, you can pair up with that person. If you're a technical person and that's your co-founders, you can go with the whole business plan and everything. They help you. There are mentors and coaches that help you come up with a business plan, market research, competitive analysis, everything. They help you come up with a prototype. And then on the third day, it's like a hackathon, right? You don't sleep or whatever. If you want, you can sleep. But on the third day, you pitch it to investors. They actually brought like 4 or 5 investors. And it was really interesting what ideas got picked as first, second, and third place, right? They asked for patents, and if the idea was patented, they were more interested in that. And anyway, so yeah, that was happening here. But there's nearby like Atlanta and New York City, and of course in the West Coast there are a lot of them. But there are a lot of popular ones, and a lot of them will take you just for your idea, right? If you have a good co-founder, if you have a plan on how you're going to execute it, they will take you, and if you go to those things, that's like awesome, because there's a lot of visibility in those.
A lot of your ideas and experiences are general public applications are ideas. Do you have any additional steps for someone who's starting a government sector or medical field or something like that?
So you're talking about business-to-business applications? Yeah. So business-to-business applications are a little tricky because it's also easy at the same time it's tricky because you have only one business to go talk to. If you convince like 3 guys that your app is awesome, then all their entire company uses it, or all that. But they also get bombarded with lots of requests for apps and stuff like that. So that all happens. I know Mike Cleary and some of them from Beeline know. Mostly those happen via relationships and connections. So you have to leverage. That's why like a lot of companies have a relationship management team. All they do is like develop connections, and because at that space it's more on who trusts who, and they give the business to the people who they are comfortable with.
Get into
Yeah, and a similar story with Uber. I mean, they had a conference that was coming up. They only did business with black car services at that time. So they were able to approach those black car services, sell the idea, and when that big event happened where there's a lot of tech stars and a lot of influencers showed up, they gave the app to them and said, hit a button and watch your ride show up. So they just literally felt it. They didn't have to say it. They just literally did it, and a black car pulled up, and that became a sensation. They're like, oh my gosh, this is freaking awesome. You know what I mean? Anyone else? Go ahead.
So on the marketing slide that you had, I had some questions about any tools that would help in that space.
What's that?
So on the marketing slide where you had all these different points, I didn't know if there was tooling that you use to help you along that path, or if it was just things that you did manually, or maybe these were lessons that you learned along the path. I wasn't sure where you
Yeah.
landed on those different things.
So this particular session was more about technical startups, right? So, and more geared towards bootstrapping your own app. So those were means for you not to spend money to market your app, right? So you can, of course, there are, of course, tools and aggregators and stuff like that where they will post on different social media platforms and help you monitor and analyze and give you feedback on whether your ad is working, how many impressions you made. They go above and beyond on what your traditional Facebook and Instagram provide in terms of analytics. So there are tools out there. I think they cost more money, and so I just picked like the top 10 ones that don't cost money. But if you're willing to spend a little bit of money, there are tools out there that can help you.
Personally did use tools that were free tools
Yes.
that help you in that space.
Yeah. No, I didn't. So in that space, I didn't. So most of it, if we go back, most of it is just like posting on, social media and going to events and writing on journals and blog posts and stuff like that. So it didn't really involve any tooling, so to speak.
Yeah, I was thinking more like on the monitoring side. So, if there are mentions that are happening on Twitter, or there are people that are writing blog posts that are sort of in the same space that you're operating in, that sort of thing, sort of monitoring what's happening in the market, and then sort of because I see people do this who have businesses and they use LinkedIn as a way to sort of promote themselves, and so they sort of they kind of keep in tune with what's happening in the same general spaces they're operating in, and so they'll comment on other people's posts and things like that to help promote their own business and their own brand. And so I've seen LinkedIn used that way. So I didn't know if you leveraged LinkedIn as a tool to do that sort of thing, or if you used other tools to do that sort of thing, or if you just sort of did things in a manual fashion.
I did mostly manual, and then the Facebook provides tooling around that too. Have you used Facebook ads and stuff? So when you post an ad, they help you come up with an ad and stuff. Once you post an ad, they monitor it. They can pick your demographic. You can say, I'm targeting school kids or college students or married people, single people. They have all these different demographics you can target. You can target like specific cities, and you can monitor how many impressions and how many clicks that's making, and they will make suggestions. So they've built a lot of tooling around that. Like you just pay for the ad, and they take care of like the analytics side of things. So I've used that. Like I said, there are tools that aggregate all of that across, like Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, all your major social media platforms, like Snapchat and Tinder and stuff like that, and they aggregate it and give you a consolidated view of that. I know those exist, but I haven't used them.
And the other question I had was around the homepage or the landing page for the app. So did you see a measurable increase in interest after you had a landing page, or did you have a landing page before you launched the app? How did you
So one of the lessons we learned was, at least with Trade Sumo, it was too late by the time we figured out that we need to install like analytic tools and stuff like that. So this is more like after going through that experience, like saying like, hey, please do this, and install monitoring tools, because we weren't able to capture that data, right? We post an ad, we had no idea how many people were going to our landing pages. So that's why later on we installed Google Analytics, but it was already too late. And we were running out of money in terms of ads and stuff like that. So, but yeah, like the best way to do it is just to install all these like Countleys and all these analytics tools and feedback tools inside your website and monitor that closely. I think we're right about the 1 hour mark. If you guys don't have any questions, go conquer the world, become millionaires, and good luck to you all. Thank you.